Hey guys, how's it going? Today's video I wanted to talk about is all the requirements that are necessary to do this kind of swap. I'm not going to talk about the money side of it because that's kind of like, you know, it depends like on where you shop and what you need and what you're buying and stuff like that. But it's going to be well over 1,000 anyway, that's for sure. Everything that I'm talking about is the fact that it's worked out for me in that sense. So, you know, you may need to do a little bit of research on your end for your particular application. Might work differently, I don't know 100%. In order to do this swap, you need a couple of things. I've listed all out in my laptop. There might be one or two little things that I'm missing, but I don't think it's too much too far away from what's on the list here. But basically, you need the engine. The engine comes in is a little bit different to the original Panda engine. Even though it is the same block and everything, the internals are a little bit different compression ratios. The head is different with the, you know, the timings of camshafts and stuff like that. I mean, you can use the Panda ones. You'll get more air into the engine and then you'll be able to run higher horsepower, but that's at a later date. First, like, I'd suggest getting the car working on a base level and then start customizing it from then on. So you need the engine, of course. You can use an Abarth 500, Bravo, Punto, whichever one you want. I'd suggest if you want for some space saving and more OEM kind of fitment, go with the Abarth 500 because the oil cooler unit is a little bit different. It's a little bit skinnier, more upright, and doesn't kind of like get in the way of things in that area. The more parts you get on that engine, the better. It'll just save you a lot more time, money. Next thing you need is the ECU. You don't necessarily need like the keys, the body computer and all that sort of stuff, because what you can do is you can actually program the ECU to be a virgin ECU, and then when you plug it in for the first time and you turn the key over with the new ECU in it, you'll be able to basically register your old key in the car in the ECU. You need a programmer to program the ECU. You can do it yourself. I did it myself as a little experiment and it worked out for me pretty well. You need to be careful, like open up the ECU, solder in some wires, connect them up to your programmer and program the virgin code into it. You can do this yourself. If you don't feel comfortable, get someone that knows how to do it, because you screw it up, you're out in ECU and then you have to go source another one. You can use, I think, the Punto one or the Bravo one or the Abarth 500 one. I think they all work the same way to virginize. So, you know, take your pick. I have Bravo 150, so I'll have 150 horsepower straight away. Next thing you need is your intercooler and your intercooler piping. You can try and use or salvage the Bravo one. It's got all the bends and everything in certain places and whatnot. The only issue that I can see is the pipe going into the intake, because it kind of gets into a way of a lot of things. It's best to use the Abarth 500 cooling piping into the intake, and then the rest of it just kind of custom make your own lines. I got all the silicone piping from Turbo Zentrum on eBay. They're brilliant. I live in Ireland, so everything that they shipped from the Liverpool came the next day, so can't complain. Let's see, after the intercooler piping, you need the Abarth 500 fuel pump. So you need specifically this fuel pump because the fuel tank is, I think it's pretty much exactly the same as the Panda's fuel tank. The little float that indicates the level of fuel that's in the tank is a certain shape. You can't use the Bravo's one. I have tried to see if I could swap out the one that's in the Panda and the Bravo, but the way the fuel pump is turned in the tank, it doesn't fit in properly. So your best bet is to go and use an Abarth 500 fuel pump. The next thing you need to do is create a return line. I made mine out of copper and fuel rubber hoses. Seems to be working so far, no big issues, unless you can do the bead kind of roll. Don't flare it because you might tear the inside of the fuel pipe. So the next thing you need to do is you have to update your body wiring to the ECU loom. So what that means is that the loom that's connected to your radiator fans, to your headlights, to your fuse box, and then it goes into the cockpit of the car under the dashboard. So that whole loom, you need to update two things on it. So one, you need to introduce the plug and wiring for the turbo pressure sensor, and you also need to update the ECU plug, your body side ECU loom, to fit the ECU. And it's not too big of a deal if you have the wiring diagrams for, say, the Fiat Bravo and Panda 1.4. The ECU side, I think, is the plug A that you need to update. That's it. There's nothing else to it. You may need to run a new lines for the earth cables, which I think are pins like 3 and 4 or 1 and 3, I can't remember, but you just need to add those 2 plugs and then run into the battery. What's next you need, I say this just because it kind of like makes it fit a lot better and stuff like that, but the Abarth cooling piping, it's so say from the Abarth 500, that's the best bet. Get all your cooling piping from one of those, just because everything will be a bit more OEM, kind of like everything fits up a bit better, dodges a lot of piping, or the turbo goes around turbos and whatnot. You know, it'll just make life a little bit easier. You can modify it a little bit as necessary. That's what I did with one of my pipes. You also need to retain the Panda 1.4 engine mount, because if you don't, then the engine won't fit in. Basically, like because the blocks are exactly the same on the Pandas and the Bravos and the Abarth 500s, you can just take the original Panda 1.4 engine mount and just smash it onto your engine block, whichever TJet engine. I'm just going to say TJet from now on. Then also, I forgot to add it in here, but it's just cropped into my mind. If you're going to be using Panda's gearbox, you will pretty much keep everything that you had on the Panda. So you will be using the flywheel, clutch, flywheel bolts. Now they're really important because the TJet bolts are a little bit longer because you have a dual flywheel, and so if you're using those, you need to shorten those bolts, because I've made the mistake of bolting on the gearbox onto the engine using the TJet bolts, flywheel bolts, and the engine doesn't actually even turn. So what you have to do is you have to take the gearbox off again, cut the bolts and put them back on. Expand the holes on the Panda's flywheel because they're not big enough for the bolts that you're putting in, so you have to make those holes bigger. I'd suggest probably getting this done by a machine shop, because I did mine with a drill and it's probably not the best way to do it, but so far it's working for me. But I would probably suggest using it or getting it done by a proper machine shop. I think that's kind of all the niggly bits that's to do with doing the swap. So that's pretty much everything for this video. I hope it was really informative. I did a lot of research, have done a lot of mistakes on it to try and get it to the point of where it is now, so it's cost me a little bit of time and money and everything, but hopefully like this can be done a lot more easier now with this information. Let me know in the comments if you need any extra details. You know, get in touch with me on the Facebook Fiat Panda pages. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. So next videos that I'll be posting up will be the actual build of the car and how I'm going through it, so stay tuned. Thank you.